Hello, everyone. Welcome to Thinking Out Loud. My name is Jill Francis, and today I want to talk about Ascension, 3D to 5D. Now, when I first heard these terms, I had no idea what anybody was talking about, and I had to go and do some research and study and find out for myself. And when I first thought about doing this YouTube channel, I thought, well, I'm not smart enough. I haven't learned a lot enough. I'm not an expert in anything. And it really held me back for a long time. And it has occurred to me over time that maybe there's many out there who are just like me and who might be struggling with the same things. What are you talking about? What do you mean 3D? And this ascension to 5D, what does that mean? And what happened to 4D? How come nobody's talking about 4D? And so I thought today I would just share with you what I've learned. And again, not saying I'm an expert on these things, but this is what I've learned from others and how I've internalized it and made sense of it for me. And so I hope that it might help somebody else out there as they are beginning to understand these concepts. So let's start with 3D. What is 3D? Well, we're living in 3D, and it means the third dimension. And even before we start describing, how I see 3D, when you think about the ascension process, what does it mean to ascend? And I mean, ascend is literally moving upward. So you could say you're moving up through the dimensions to higher level dimensions. But I also want to kind of make it clear that there's no good and bad in this concept. One dimension is not better or worse than another. They're different. They're higher frequencies, but each serves a purpose in our own development. And there's a reason why we've been living in a 3D world. And we'll talk about that as we examine what exactly we mean by 3D. So when I think of 3D, I think of a very heavy, sort of dense energy. It's like it's thick and it's heavy and it's hard to move almost. And we're not really aware of it because it's been the world we've lived in all our lives, pretty much. So, but there are a few words that I think of to describe it or kind of themes around 3D. One of them is this law of opposites. So we have good, bad, dark, light, things like that. That exists in the 3D. I'll talk about that. It's also, you could say, sort of isolationist and sort of very separate, very divided. We'll talk about that as well. And sort of an idea of competition and lack. And so all of these things are easier to describe because they're really the world we live in, even if we hadn't sort of tried to define them. So let's look at this concept of opposites. And this is very much the world we live in because the 3D world is very physical. So we know things by their opposite. If we've never experienced darkness, we don't know when it's light out. If we've never experienced sadness, we wouldn't know when we're happy. And so we do live in a world of opposites, and we live in a world of sort of very tangible, physical things that we can see and hear and taste and touch. That's 3D. And also this concept of being very separate. We see ourselves, again, because of our physicality, we see ourselves as individuals and separate from one another. And we also see ourselves as different from each other. And we tend to, in the 3D, sort of categorize kind of who we are. And so we put ourselves in boxes, or other people put us in boxes. So we're male, female. And then we attach value to each of those boxes. So we know what our value is, whether you are well-educated or a high school dropout, whether you are, whatever race you are, whatever religion you are, whatever sexual orientation you are, whatever gender you are. We create all kinds of boxes. And all these boxes do is continue to put layers and layers and layers of separateness from ourselves and other people. And so it reinforces this idea that we are alone and we are isolated and we're individuals. The other thing about 3D is that it's based in a lack mentality. In sort of the physical world, there being a finite amount of anything, finite amount of resources, finite amount of money, finite, everything seems to have a limit. And I'm not saying that's true. I'm saying that's our perception. So and this lack creates competition. So we believe that if you go out and you catch all the fish, then there won't be enough fish for me. So I have to go and get what I have to go get my share, or there won't be enough. And I was raised in a very large family, so I very much learned that if you don't get it first, you're not going to get any. So that's again a 3D concept, that somebody wins means somebody else loses, and there isn't enough for all of us. So it creates competition rather than cooperation. And then, of course, we have all these structures in the 3D world that just sort of continue to reinforce these concepts, so that is what we see. And when I talk about systems, I'm talking about our education system, our government, organized religions, financial institutions, the medical industry, all of these things, these systems and structures, they reinforce all of these 3D concepts. So that's sort of how I see the 3D. And then when we move into 4D, we start to see that there's something beyond the physical, that we might be more than what we can see in the mirror. We begin to think of ourselves as creators, and that we actually we're not just victims of, say, our circumstance, but that we actually can control, to a certain extent, our destiny, because our thoughts and our feelings can create our reality. So we begin to play with these ideas, and we start to see ourselves as not just physical, but that we have energy. And that energy, when we put it out into the world, we can actually create things. And by recognizing that we're energetic beings, we also begin to sense that we're connected to each other, and also connected to our Mother Earth, and connected to all living beings. So, we also start to see that we're not quite as different, and we're not as separate as from each other as we think, because we begin to understand that my energy affects you and your energy is affecting me, and we might not even be physically present, we might not say or do anything to each other, but we're being affected by each other. So we start to see that there's more to this than just sort of our lonely selves. And I thought another example that I think that is sort of relevant is, to kind of help demonstrate the difference. So let's pretend that there was something wrong with your body. From a 3D perspective, you might just make an appointment with the doctor and go see, like, what's wrong with me? The doctor is a source outside of ourselves, but he is viewed as an authority, and he's the one you would seek treatment, and he will tell you what's wrong with you, and he will prescribe some medicine, or again, using things outside of ourselves, because that's sort of the 3D way that we deal with things, and he'll tell you what to do, and you'll go home and you'll do it, and maybe you'll get better, maybe you won't. From a 4D perspective, you might start to see that maybe you're wiser inside than you think you are. You might begin to question, why is this physical ailment, this physical thing showing up in my life? What is my body trying to tell me? You might start thinking about it differently. You might start trusting that you know inside of you more maybe than the doctor knows. Maybe it's not medicine at all that you need. Maybe you need some sort of energy treatment. Maybe you need to relax. Maybe you need there's all kinds of energetic healing modalities, Reiki and acupuncture and massage and all kinds of energy medicine that you might start turning to. So I think that's definitely a shift that I've seen in my own life, and maybe you're feeling the same way, but it's a way of saying that this was how we did it in the 3D world, and we're moving towards a more holistic, energetic approach, even to our bodies, especially to our bodies. And we also begin to see that when we cooperate and we work together, we can actually achieve more, and we're not so different from each other as we might have thought we were. So that's sort of my take on the on 4D. And also, for me, when it started becoming alive was starting to learn about and practice the law of attraction. And that's those principles of the law of attraction are kind of based in a 4D that, we are more in control of what happens in our lives than we think, and we begin to at least start playing with the concept that we create our own reality. So that's how I see 4D. Now 5D, I think we move again. 3D and 4D are easier to talk about because we're actually experiencing them, and I would also say we're beginning to experience glimpses of 5D. But it's a little bit more theoretical because I really believe it's where we're moving. But these are also, remember, they can be physical, actual changes to us, but they're also changes in our consciousness. So we can move into 5D in a consciousness and our way of thinking even before we do so, say, in the physical. And maybe both are happening simultaneously. I don't know. We're in the middle of it right now, so we're going to see how it all turns out. But I think one of the most important ways to define the fifth dimension for me is that we become much more unity consciousness. And we are very much aware of how connected we are to each other, to our Mother Earth, to every living thing. One of the sayings that I heard that really resonated with me as I was trying to get my head around some of these ideas was, what I do to another, I do to myself. And it made me really conscious of trying to treat everybody, even in the way I think about them, in a kinder, more compassionate way. Because we all are connected, and because it's the energy that I'm sending out. And if I'm sending out negative energy to another person or to another thing, then I'm also sending that energy to myself. So I think in the 5D we become much more aware of that. We become much more aware of our interconnectedness, and that we really are all one, which I love that, because I think we are all one, because we are all pieces of our Creator. And so we have a connection that we're only beginning to discover right now. So I love that. I also think that our ability to create, we are creators, plain and simple, bottom line, it's who we are. And as we move into the 5D, our ability to create, I think, is going to become more and more instantaneous. And I think that's why it's really important to practice in the 4D, because believe me, and I'm sure you guys would agree with this, that there's things that we think about that we would not want to be creating instantly, because we might be creating some really negative things in our lives. So now's the time to practice, and as we move into 5D, I think that we're going to start creating a lot quicker and a lot more instantly, and we're going to really tap into our abilities in that way. And I also think, and I think that, I'm sure if you're aware of this at all, I'm sure you're feeling the same thing, because I know that the energies have been moving up and up and up for the last, for a very long time, but I'll say everything's amping up in this last year or two. And I think we're feeling that. I think our bodies are absorbing that. And I think we are, becoming more light body, which is, again, a characteristic of the 5D. And we move out of denser energy into lighter energy. And all our intuitive abilities, I believe, are beginning to come online. If they haven't been already, they certainly are now. And I think as we enter more into that 5D consciousness, you will find, I know I have been finding my intuitive abilities are heightened. And I think things like telepathic abilities and things like that are just going to continue to be enhanced. And I can't talk about 5D without saying that underneath everything that I've just said, ability to create or connecting to one another, but the force, the power, the source of all of that is love. And it's this emotional feeling of love that we have towards ourselves and to each other and to our planet and to all living things that powers this higher energy. And it's such an awareness because of this increase in love that's actually what destroys all, in my opinion, all of sort of those structures that no longer serve us. And because we become full of love, that replaces fear, that replaces lack, that replaces all those sort of things that we can perceive as negative in the 3D, and allow us to move into a brighter, lighter, more connected sort of space. Because we realize that everything we need is inside of us. We don't have to go looking outside for answers, for support, for knowledge, we don't need those 3D structures anymore. You don't need a government telling you what you need to do to keep yourself safe. You don't need a doctor telling you what you need to do to make you well. You don't need a religious leader to tell you how to connect to God. All of those things are inside you. And I think that that's going to just sort of be a natural evolution, that those structures they just won't be necessary anymore, because we will do what we feel is right for us, and we'll be able to trust those feelings, where right now we don't trust ourselves enough, and we look to outside sources for answers that are inside of us. So I'm going to leave it there for today. I hope that helps. If you are at all new to this, or kind of like just struggling, like, what is all this talk about 3D, 4D, 5D? I hope that helps. I think it's an interesting topic. I'm sure we'll touch on it again. And again, I would love to hear back, and I'd love to hear some of the comments, and I'd like to hear about your own journey. I'd like to turn this into a conversation. So please feel free. Feel free to like this video if it resonated with you, share it, and subscribe to my channel. And please leave your comments below. Thank you.